Hello. Welcome to the Learn American English channel, where you learn naturally so you can speak naturally. Welcome to this video series, Small Words, Big Impact, where we explore small but powerful words in the English language. These short words may seem simple, but they make up 50% of everything we say and write. That's why they're some of the most important words to learn. Today, we're focusing on the word but, its meanings and how to use it correctly. In this lesson, we will learn the different definitions of but, see clear example sentences, and take a short quiz after each definition to test your understanding. So listen carefully and see if you can get all the answers right. Be sure to stay with us until the end, where we'll review everything with a final quiz. Are you excited? Let's get started. The first definition of the word but is a conjunction that connects ideas in three important ways. Contrast, showing a difference between two ideas. Exception, indicating something or someone is excluded. Contrasting idea after a negative statement, following a negative phrase with an unexpected contrast. Let's break each of these down with examples. But to show contrast. Definition: but is often used to contrast two ideas that are different or opposite. It tells us that what comes after but is different from what came before it. In each sentence, but introduces a contrast between two things. You expect one thing, but the opposite happens. Example sentences: I like coffee, but she prefers tea. It was cold outside, but we still went for a walk. He studied hard, but he didn't pass the test. Can you think of a sentence where but shows contrast? Drop it in the comments. But to indicate exception. Definition: sometimes but means except for or other than. This is when we use it to exclude something or someone from a group. Here, but means except. It tells us that someone or something is the only exception to the general statement. Example sentences: everyone but Jake attended the meeting. There's nothing but sand in the desert. I have no choice but to wait. Try using but in a sentence that shows an exception. Share yours in the comments below. We'll practice in the quiz right after the next definition, so keep watching. But after a negative statement. Definition: but can also introduce a contrasting idea after a negative statement. This happens when the first part of the sentence is negative, but the second part contradicts or challenges that idea. Each of these sentences starts with a negative, wasn't, didn't, and then introduces an unexpected contrast after but. It's a great way to add surprise to what you're saying. Example sentences: she wasn't feeling well, but she still went to work. He didn't know how to swim, but he jumped in the pool anyway. I didn't expect much, but the movie was amazing. Can you come up with a sentence where but contrasts a negative statement? Now let's take a quiz to review and learn the definitions better. Which sentence uses but to show contrast? A. Everyone but Jake attended the meeting. B. She wasn't feeling well, but she still went to work. C. I wanted to stay home, but my friend convinced me to go out. The answer is C. This sentence contrasts wanting to stay home with being convinced to go out. But let's talk about why A and B are not the correct answers. A. Everyone but Jake attended the meeting. This sentence does not show contrast between two opposing ideas. Instead, it excludes Jake from the group, meaning it fits definition 2. Exception, not contrast. Now, B is tricky. B. She wasn't feeling well, but she still went to work. While this does show a contrast, it specifically follows a negative statement. She wasn't feeling well. This makes it an example of definition 3. Contrasting idea after a negative statement, not general contrast. Final takeaway. A is an exception, not a contrast. B is a contrast, but only after a negative statement. C is the best example of contrast, showing two different ideas directly opposed to each other, staying home versus going out. Understanding the different meanings of but is key to sounding like a native speaker. Many English learners use but for contrast, but miss how it's also used for exceptions and unexpected contrasts after negative statements. Mastering these subtle differences will boost your fluency and help you communicate more naturally and precisely, just like a native. Keep practicing, and soon you'll be using but effortlessly in conversation. Now let's look at the second definition of the word but. But can sometimes mean except for or other than. Here are some examples. There is no one here but me, meaning I am the only person here. She had nothing but a suitcase when she arrived, meaning the only thing she had was a suitcase. He does nothing but complain all day, meaning complaining is the only thing he does. We had no choice but to leave, meaning leaving was the only option we had. Now that you know this definition of but, let's take a quick quiz. Which sentence below uses but to mean except for or other than? A. I like tea, but my brother prefers coffee. B. There was no sound but the wind. C. She didn't feel well, but she still went to work. D. Everyone but Sarah attended the meeting. The answer is B. There was no sound but the wind means the wind was the only sound. There was no sound other than or except for the wind. Let's review the meaning of but in each of the quiz sentences. A is not correct. I like tea, but my brother prefers coffee. This sentence shows contrast between two different preferences, tea versus coffee. It does not mean except for or other than. It fits the contrast definition of but, not the exception meaning. B is correct. There was no sound but the wind. No sound but the wind means the wind was the only sound. But here means except for or other than, which matches the prepositional use of but. C is not correct. She didn't feel well, but she still went to work. This sentence starts with a negative statement, she didn't feel well, and then presents an unexpected contrast, but she still went to work. This follows the contrasting idea after a negative statement definition, not the except for or other than meaning. D is not correct. Everyone but Sarah attended the meeting. This sentence uses but to exclude Sarah from the group, meaning Sarah is the only exception. While it does mean except for, it's specifically an exception related to people or things in a group, rather than an alternative phrase for other than, like in sentence B. Bonus challenge. Can you create your own sentence using but in one of these three ways? Drop it in the comments and let's see if others can guess which definition it fits. Now you've mastered the 4 main ways to use but in English. Contrast shows a difference. Exception excludes something or someone. Contrasting idea after a negative statement. Introduces an unexpected contrast. Preposition means except for or other than. These small words have a big impact on fluency. The more you understand them, the more natural your English will sound. If you found this lesson helpful, like, share, and subscribe for more English tips. And remember to comment with your own sentence using but. Let's see if others can guess the meaning. See you in the next lesson.